So you know who's one of my heroes? Les Stroud. Man, he's awesome. He's just a cool cat. He just seems like a nice guy, like a real guy. Like, and his survival stuff is kind of like fun. Like it's him, his cameras out in the wilderness for like 7 days, I believe it is. Like, and no disrespect to Bear Grylls, but from what I understand, like they do that on location. They set up things for him to do, and they go back to a hotel or whatever at night, and that's fine. I just wish the wool hadn't been pulled over our eyes. Like, Les Stroud is the real deal. Like, I think. I don't know, But I like those shows. If you get a chance, check out the Bear Grylls with Will Ferrell, where I think they survived 2 days or something like that in the wilderness. I don't know how much I'm sure most of that show was set up, but it was pretty funny. I also want to, the last video I was talking about the suggesters to this list. I don't want to just keep using people's names if they don't, I guess they wouldn't care. So, the ghost stories, Bob had recommended that I do. And that was great because I hadn't thought of that. So, this is what I'm talking about. Like, when people suggest things, I'm like, oh my god, yes. And there's so many stories within that one subject I could revisit over the course of the next year or so. I kind of want to do some more contests or something more interactive. I don't know what that is yet, but I'd love to make this experience more interactive somehow. Maybe I could start doing them live or something. Well, I guess that wouldn't work. I could record them. I'll have to look into that. I don't know. So, the second person to suggest something was Chris Hamlin. I touched on this subject briefly once. This is my first job, working at P.R.I.D.E. I was 18, I think. Such a loser. So, I don't know how I got the job there. I had applied there once, I think. Previously, someone I knew had already worked there. Oh, Sean Dennison, I believe, was working there in the warehouse at the time. And so he helped me get in my foot in the door there, I believe. And it was mostly production work at the beginning, but you work right alongside with the clients. Clients being people who have mental. Yeah, they have these menticles that grow out of them. Oh, it's so hot. No. Mental or physical disabilities. They usually live in a group home or have to have constant adult supervision. And so there were floor managers that went to school for that and worked more with the clients. You just happen to work beside them. But some clients were, what's the word? Super smart, but, and I don't mean crazy like that way, but like smart. You're so smart, you kind of lose it. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. I worked with, I'm just going to use the first name because I doubt it'll ever come back on me, but Robert, I can't remember what his mental disability was, but he dressed like he was from the 80s. That's what it was. Yeah, if you get caught in Taunton dressing like the 80s, you're considered mentally, no, you're not. That's horrible. That's a terrible thing. But he did. I don't know why. And I think a lot of the clients did. It must be a mental regression thing or something. I don't know. So Robert was fast. We worked on this. They always kept him on the same machine, and God forbid it went down. That it was a heat sealer, blister packages, like action figures. Is it sad that I can just reach somewhere and find something like this? Actually, they don't. This isn't legitimately. Well, I guess it is up top. So what you would do is in this specific job within this warehouse, you'd take the plastic, you'd put it in the mold that they sent you, the company sent you, you'd fill it with well, in this case, there'd probably be somebody else doing all the other work, getting the governor inside the package. Then you'd put the back on, you run your machine into this heat sealer, and you hear it stamp, and you have to set the time to figure out how long it takes to properly heat seal here. And if it's not enough, in shipping, especially if it gets cold, boom, it'll just pop apart. So if you ever go into stores and you see like packages that are just popping open, usually it was a bad heat seal job. Isn't this interesting? I'm actually so glad you tuned in for video number 2 tonight. So that was one of my first jobs. And so I was doing it, but I mean, I just started. And this other guy across from me, Robert, I mean, he's like lightning. Like, you have rates that if you go over your rate, you make more money. It's kind of, I don't know. It's real slave labor, I think. I'm sure some people will take offense to that, too, because I don't mean it like slave labor. But, I mean, you're not getting paid nearly a lot. And, of course, if you don't make your rate, then that gives them a reason to not give you a raise later on. And you would think that they would set the rate at a reasonable point, like the average. But they don't. They set the bar so high that you kill yourself to get to the end of the day just so you can stop. Like, that's not living. Fuck that. That's right. I reserve that word on these videos for when I really believe in something. And I don't think anybody should have to work at the rate and the speed for that kind of pay. That's just, somebody up the line is making a shit ton of money, and they could so easily distribute it better amongst their ranks, or whatever you want to call them, their sheep. It's just terrible. Okay, that's not where I was going with this. We bumped Trey's quite a few times, and whenever we hit Trey's, I was in the wrong because he was the faster one, and he would do his thing, and he'd get so mad, and it would build up to the point where you'd see him start to shake, and then he would bite his arms. Wherever he could bite, he would bite, and he had horrible welts from this, and I felt so bad because, like, I felt like I was just stressing him out, and, like, I felt like I should go do something else, and so I got sent, I think, like, 1 week or 2 weeks, or there was some time when people who worked off-site, like we'd go to the industrial park and work in some of the buildings there, and would take clients with us, and you had to supervise. Well, I remember that being one of the best, or that week being one of the best weeks, because the clients for the first time, I think they felt like they weren't rushed. And I know, I can't remember his name, who was their normal supervisor. He was a nice guy, but I could see him being kind of a hard ass on them. And I think you do have to be that way sometimes. But why? Yeah, if the pay was better for them, or if something was better for them, I think it would, I don't know. Nonetheless, I ended up going to work with them on site. And I remember just being like, you know what? I'm not going to force them to make their rates. I went around a few times and I talked to Claire. Do you remember Claire? Oh, God, I wish Corey was here. He does it really good. She used to do this dance. Claire was awesome. She had her 80s, the styrofoam headphones with the thin metal that went over. You probably saw her. I'm sure she's not around anymore. You should have her 80s Walkman on her side. And this was her dance. And this is embarrassing. That's it. All day. We would go out. Isn't that awesome? Sweet move. Actually, the Limber Louie is based on that. I'll demo that sometime. That was clear. So, so she was on one of them, and it was just a bunch of, I don't know how to say this without sounding terrible, but people who could live on their own, but still need a little help here and there. And so, we had fun. We turned the radio up, and, when somebody wanted to dance, I was just like, that's awesome. He's just dancing. He doesn't give a shit. He's happy to dance. And that was, for me, one of the best weeks. I don't think about it often, so I'm glad that Hamlin recommended this. Or Chris. But that was my job. Then, apparently, because they weren't making their rate, they pulled me off of that job. I don't know if that was the reason why. I mean, I think it probably was. And, so I never got to work with them on that capacity again. But when there came a time, they shifted me to the warehouse, and I basically was a warehouse manager because Bill, Crack Bill, we used to call him, because he was always hiring crack. I pretty much had to be there before him. I actually picked him up on the way to work most mornings, and some mornings I had to leave him because I was just like, dude, if you're not going to open the warehouse, I have to. And I lived right across the street from him. He was in the yellow house, one of those apartments. So I basically became the warehouse manager without the pay or title or benefits or anything like that. And I didn't care because I didn't want to work in the warehouse. I knew I wasn't going to stay in warehouse. Like, fuck that. Like, I know people have to do that, but most people are better than that. All people are better than that. Like, unless the wages go up, like I said, then it makes more sense. But pay them like a double like living wage. Like, you could afford to do that if you're some CEO of a company who makes billions a year. Like, God forbid you could only make $1 billion a year or like 900 million. You know how much I would kill for like, well, not kill. I wouldn't kill anybody or anything, but I mean, just for like $1 million, like, and that would leave me with like years of like the ability to not have to work. Like, I would definitely downgrade everything about the house. And so, where am I going with this? Let's livable wage, P.R.I.D.E. So I wanted to work with a client. So they had offered me a driving position with them where I'd do deliveries. I was thinking, man, I gotta be even earlier to the warehouse because I have to fill all the orders and then drive out. And you're constantly moving all day like that. And now, in hindsight, like, I'd love to be traveling like that because even if it's the same route, like, you know, just get some fresh air and you can get a coffee and do your thing. But I didn't want that. I wanted to either work with the clients or not be there anymore. And I was working at Shaw's, too, at the time. This was bloody murder. I mean, these were like 90-hour weeks, 80-hour weeks sometimes. And, I mean, when you're younger, it's not as bad. But, like, now, oh my God, I'd shoot myself in the face twice. I remember the roach coach every day. Now, by the time, I think I was there like 3 years. By my second year, Frank and Pat had moved into my house, and we were hanging out a lot. Like, I was hanging out down the studio more with Greg and Chris Lambert and the guys and Kitty Carryall and like all that. And so there came a time that I wanted to. What was my point there? Oh yeah, I was working the 80, 90-hour weeks, plus also trying to be in a band, and like, so finally I ended up giving up. I think it was Shaw's because I worked at P.R.I.D.E a little bit longer because I had to, because that was where the money was. I remember like sometimes they'd pull me off of the warehouse duty to go work on one of the assembly lines or something, or fill like cat like hair vomit. I don't know what it was, for hairballs or something. Like, there was a liquid machine that would fill these little bottles. You had to get the cap on, move it away, and put the next bottle in place before it started filling again. I couldn't do that. I'm not that coordinated when it comes to something like that. And, not like I'm coordinated or anything. And I just, I'd had it with that job. And then I think I moved over to the mall. But at P.R.I.D.E, about my second year, I got a lot of people jobs there. Pat Russell, Dan Harrington. I don't think Frank ever worked there. The bass player that used to play in Mr. McTavish, I believe. Hamlin, Paul Lorenzo. I think Bob may have worked there once. I can't remember. But we used to pile in my Pontiac T1000 at lunch every day because we had an hour lunch. And I think we did. And we'd fly back to the house and would watch like anime or like some movie or something like that while we ate. It was fun. That was a really fun summer. Like, the job sucked, but like I remember this one time we were leaving. I can't remember the name of the street P.R.I.D.E's on, but we were taking the right and then taking a left past Fitzsimmons and Arms. That place where old people go to hang out. My grandmother used to go sing there. We take a left there. Well, some guy, for whatever reason, stopped to let us go, and I was like, oh, nice guy. I didn't know until afterwards Paul Lorenzo was flipping him off the whole time. Well, that was a good one. Boom. I have a very crooked, broken-looking bird. I'm sorry, that wasn't meant for you. I'm just saying, like, I found out the guy let us go. Paul's smiling and flipping off. Somebody else was, too. I don't remember if it was Pat or... I can't even remember who else worked there at the time. I remember Dan Harrington, the lady that worked in the section he was in, refused to play anything but country music. Well, it had enough of that after like a month of working there. And no matter how many times he changed it, she changed it back. So he finally went up and he just cut the power cord. That was it. And I think that was the beginning of the end for Dan there. Oh boy. I nearly forgot about that. He used to sleep on there's a table or something that we used to work on. That was always fun when I got to work with him, which was really rare. But I remember working with him and being able to catch up with him. You know, I hadn't talked to him, since high school, and well, it was probably about a year or 2 years after that. So, and that roach coach, man, I'm sure if I ate it now, I'd feel sick. But I remember that food just being awesome. Like I used to run up crazy tabs every week, but I always made sure I paid him off first because he was a nice guy for letting me do that. Because I'd get up to like 2 weeks sometimes, be like $60, and I'd be like, can I pay you next Wednesday? He'd be like, yeah. He's like, I gotta have it Wednesday though. But he was always really cool about it. And I think part of it was he wore sunglasses that were tinted so you could never see his eyes. So he was never making eye contact with you, even when he was making eye contact with you, because he didn't know or whatever. But he was a nice guy. So, and I always paid my dues with him. But there were so many clients that were just good people. That's where I think this is what I was talking about the other night. I met Jeff Travers, Trav's mom, we used to call her. We used to call Trav at like 4 in the morning, me and Corey. Hey, is your mom there? If I said that in another video, it probably won't be as funny this time around. But we did that. So that's where I met all that group, the whole Dighton Rehoboth crew. Was at P.R.I.D.E. So Corey worked there. I have pictures of, there's actually group pictures too of all the clients and all the other people who worked there at the time. I was up in the attic today too. I was trying to look for older pictures. So that's P.R.I.D.E. in a nutshell. I'm going on to another 18-minute video right now, literally. I had one more thing I wanted to try to do tonight before I went to bed. I don't know how it's going to work out, but I'll probably come back and try it. And I got a lot more P.R.I.D.E. stories and obviously a lot more ghost stories. So maybe some nights I'll just throw one of those in with it. That's a good idea because I'm starting to get to the point where now I'm like Tales from the Chill Room, ghost stories, religion and politics. There's all these things that like I do want to keep talking about by like what's going on in the world at the time. Maybe that might be kind of fun because then you can go look back at it in 5 years and be like, wow. Yeah. So those ghosts playing tricks on me again. So anyway, remember what I said in the last video. When you get any coffee, make that person smile. If you go into some fast food chain, you're going through the drive-thru, don't leave until that person cracks a smile. Okay? You don't have to. I'm just saying. I think it would make the world a better place if we all did that. Alright, so, yeah. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.